Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Iran's foreign minister in Islamabad for talks as Israel trades fire with Hezbollah in Lebanon. After his earlier statement about meeting the head of the Pakistani army, Arakchi has released another update saying he has met Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. The foreign minister said that he explained our country's principled position on the latest developments related to the ceasefire and on the complete end of the war. The statement also said that Sharif has expressed confidence that the negotiating process would continue. We're going to talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the platform at this point in time is Major General Dhruv Katoch, defense expert. Also joining us on the show is Professor Deepthi Taneja, foreign affairs expert on the program. General Katoch, I'll begin with you. Well, sir, a lot of quarters are not very confident about this second session of talks which are taking place in Islamabad. Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff have been appointed by Donald Trump to do this mediation, but so far it seems that the Iranian side is not interested in having a conversation with them directly. There are mediators in the form of Pakistani Prime Minister and Asim Munir, who are doing the needful. Looking at both sides being adamant about what they would like this ceasefire to entail, what is your current assessment of this war, sir?
Thank you, Vineet. Vineet, firstly, I think the Iranian foreign minister, after meeting the Pakistani Prime Minister, has left. So the question of whether the talks will take place or not, I mean, that appears very doubtful unless he comes back in again. So I'm not sure as to which way the talks are going to go. Now, I think the criticality in my view is really two issues. The first issue is Iran's nuclear program. I think that is going to be a red line which the Americans will not permit something beyond a certain point. So the enriched uranium, there has to be some sort of a deal on that, and there has to be a commitment as far as the Americans and the Israelis are concerned that Iran will not make a nuclear weapon. Now, I think that is going to be one side. On the other side is going to be the status as far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned. Now, what when the Iranians, they want the blockade to end. And they say that if the blockade ends, then the strait is open. But I'm afraid it is not open, because when the blockade ends, the Iranians are still charging tax. You have to go through the Iranians for the ships to pass. So if that is going to be so, then there is no free shipping, which means the blockade effectively is still on, whichever way we look at it, from the Iranian side or the American side. So I don't think that the Strait of Hormuz is going to open anytime soon. The status quo as existing, in my view, is going to continue. The blockade is going to remain, and while the blockade is certainly impacting countries of South, the Asian countries, the global South, even Western Europe, because their jet fuel availability is going down now. As far as Iran is concerned, even they will be impacted, because their imports and exports are 80% is dependent on this particular strait. So if they cannot send their oil out, I'm afraid it has to remain in the wells, and there are different challenges of that. So let's see how this pans out, but I don't see any immediate solution or anything positive coming out in the immediate future. Vineet.
Fair enough, sir. More breaking news coming in. In the latest update, we are getting to know, as per media reports, that the meeting between Iran's foreign minister Abbas Arakchi and Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif already ended in Islamabad, and US envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are still to arrive in Islamabad, where they are traveling for what the US insists will be meetings with Iranian negotiators, but they've already left. Iran has said there will be no direct talks. However, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has confirmed the development, stating that the talks would be conducted directly but facilitated by Pakistan. She added that Vice President J.D. Vance would remain engaged from Washington, coordinating with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the National Security Team. All right, let me also rope in Professor Deepthi Taneja into this conversation. Professor Deepthi Taneja, how are you looking at these efforts by the American side, as well as this mediation by the Pakistani side? If the Iranians are saying that they do not want to have a direct conversation with the Americans, that in itself seems to be an impediment towards having any kind of a movement when it comes to ending this war, which has disrupted world economies and status quo at large?
Hi, Vineet. Good evening. See, the situation right now is that what had been weaponized by Iran all this while, which is the Strait of Hormuz, has now been weaponized by the American side. So, as Dhruv sir was saying, as Katul sir was saying, the problem right now with the Iranian side is that these oil wells have a capacity, and the Kharg Island specifically have a storage capacity limit, which Americans also very well know that the storage capacity limits is going to be approaching soon. And in that situation, this oil wells shutting down is an irreversible process. It's almost a near impossible process, Vineet, that if the oil wells shut down once, then to revive those oil wells is something which is an almost nearly impossible ask. So in that kind of a situation, now what Iran had been doing since the beginning of the war, which was weaponize the Strait of Hormuz to their advantage, to tilt the ropes in their favor in the negotiation, is exactly the same pill has now been served by the American side to the Iranian side. So by this blockade, they have effectively strangled their in and out, the ingress outgress out of the Strait of Hormuz, because of which the oil is not flowing. So here right now, this is the American negotiation team which has now decided, and Trump heading it, that we will be in indirect talks with the Iranian side has maintained that we will be in the indirect talks. But Caroline Levitt said that we are going to be in the direct talks. So as far as Pakistan's stance is there, see, day before yesterday, Iran also mentioned that they do not trust the Pakistan side at all. What the world had been saying for last so many days, that the sovereignty, autonomy, as well as neutrality of Iran is in of Pakistan is in question. Sorry. So that very statement came from the Iranian side as well, that we are not really sure of what role Pakistan is playing. But right now, Iran has been put in a situation where there is from fire into the frying pan, that they cannot really have that much of a bargaining power as long as the blockade is effective. But America also knows at the same time that boots on the ground is not an option anymore. Their air missiles and the defense system have been completely overshadowed, I would say, by the Shahed drones of Iranian side. So this negotiation and this entire process, which was going in the Iranian favor for the last so many days, America has tilted it in its favor now with this effective blockade. So now this is to be seen how quickly Iran will relent, what all will Iran relent to, which is where the talks will be heading. And in this game, the role of China is also going to be very important, Vineet, because China at the last moment, and the last phase one of the talks also, we saw that it came out as the last minute savior. So at this situation also, Chinese role cannot be overruled at this point in time. Over to you, Vineet.
You're quite right. More breaking news coming in. Turkey's foreign minister has said that he believes that the key sticking points relating to nuclear issues could be resolved during a next round of peace talks between the US and Iran. Also coming in, Iran's armed forces have threatened to respond if the US continues its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. It comes from a statement issued by the Army's command center and shared by multiple state media outlets, including the Tasmin news agency, which is affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It said that if the US Army continues the siege, banditry and piracy at sea in the region, they will face a response from the Iranian armed forces. General Katoch, well, the sticking point, as I mentioned when I broke this news, is obviously the enriched uranium that Iran still has. In fact, the previous Ayatollah went on to say that there is no way that Iran will ever use this uranium for nuclear weapons, perhaps nuclear energy, but never weapons. But the current regime, in fact, has completely changed that lane and gone on to say that they will use this uranium for nuclear bombs. In fact, even a dirty bomb cannot be ruled out of the question. How right are the Americans when it comes to having this particular facet of the negotiations, sir, as a nucleus of this deal?
You see, I think the nuclear question has been central to everything which is going on in West Asia. Because I have met the Israelis many times, and I'm not talking about recently, I'm talking about as far back as 10 years. And at that time, the ambassador was very, very clear. He said that if the Iranians ever are coming close to a nuclear bomb, we are going to take it out. And he even went to the extent when I asked him, I said, what happens if the Americans are not with you? He said, we will do it alone. Now, for them, it is an existential threat. and Iran with a nuclear weapon, which has consistently been saying that we will eliminate the state of Israel from the face of the earth, they take that threat very seriously, and obviously that elimination can only take place with a nuclear weapon. So it is, the nuclear issue is fundamental. And I'm not sure as to how, even the previous Ayatollah, I agree, he said that we won't make a bomb. But these are mere words. You've got the ability, you will make a bomb. And once you got a bomb, then you are like North Korea. You can start blackmailing whomsoever you please. So it's going to be a very difficult situation as far as the nuclear issue is concerned. But the more fundamental issue is really the Strait of Hormuz, and what Professor Taneja said is absolutely right. You see, the pressure is now on both sides. Now, if Iran is threatening to open the strait on its own, which means that the Americans have told Iran wants to open it, I'm afraid they will have to do so by eliminating the American warships there. If they attempt to do it by, say, hitting the American facilities in other Gulf countries, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, or wherever those in Iraq, or wherever the facilities may be, I'm afraid they're going to go in for a second round of bombing of Tehran. So the options for Iran, as in my view, are getting limited. They are narrowing down further and further, and as time goes by, I think they will be in tension. As far as China is concerned, you see, because these supplies are not going to China, China is also very seriously impacted the way India is impacted. But China is going to hold on. They've got enough reserves. And I think they are enjoying seeing the Americans and the Iranians fight it out. Now they are watching. It is something like the Americans were quite happy seeing the Russians and the Ukrainians fight it out, and they were watching. The same situation here is prevailing. And over a period of time, I think the Chinese strength is going to rise. China is not being hurt. China is being hurt, I'll rephrase that, but they're not being hurt as badly as the others. So in this particular game, everybody is being hurt, but America is losing power and China is gaining power. And I think if the situation carries on for a longer time, it will be to China's benefit, though economically everybody is losing, most of all countries of the global south, especially India and China. Vineet.
You're right, sir. More breaking news coming in. Traffic through the choked Strait of Hormuz remains significantly lower than pre-war levels. Only a handful of vessels appear to have traversed the crucial waterway so far today. And according to tracking data, this has been confirmed. The channel through which 1/5 of global crude oil flows has become a key focal point of the US-Israeli war with Iran, with spiraling economic impacts around the world. Tehran and Washington have launched separate blockades of the waterway, with Iran attacking what it calls hostile vessels and the US targeting ships from Iranian ports. Data from Marine Traffic, a maritime intelligence provider, shows an oil product tanker named OceanJet, owned by an Indian company, and an oil and chemical tanker called Lumina Ocean crossed the waterway in recent hours. A Russian-flagged yacht has also sailed through the strait. More breaking news coming in. Israel has continued its deadly attacks on southern Lebanon despite a 3-week extension of a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. The latest attack on the town of Yomar al-Shafiq killed at least 4 people, and this has been confirmed according to Lebanon's health ministry. Israeli forces also continued their campaign of destruction in southern Lebanon, demolishing buildings in the town of Bint Jabir. Professor Deepthi, also we have spoken about the nuclear issue. We have covered Strait of Hormuz. What about Israel? Israel definitely has a dog in his fight, and Israel is continuing to exercise aggression, despite a so-called ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. It's obviously very provocative in nature that Israel continues to not be a part of these negotiations, and perhaps has a huge stake when it comes to taking out Iran, but at what cost to the rest of the world? Like General Katoch also mentioned, that countries in the global south are reeling under immense economic pressure. Israel should worry about that too.
Yeah. So Vineet, right now Israel is only worried about the fact that it has to eliminate Lebanon. So like even on the day when the ceasefire was announced, at that point in time also the Israeli forces never withdrew themselves from the southern Lebanon buffer zone that they had created. So effectively, if a ceasefire was in place and they actually meant to honor that ceasefire, the Israeli forces should have retracted themselves. But that never happened on ground. And within just 3 to 4 days of the so-called ceasefire, the Israeli side rather blamed the Lebanon side that they were the ones who had fired first, because the clause of the so-called ceasefire was also that in case it is violated by any one of them, the other party has the free right to now also start bombarding. So which is the exact clause that Israeli used to their advantage. They said that the firings from the Lebanese side have not stopped, so we are effectively now declaring the ceasefire not effective and we will also be retaliating. So Israel is rather looking at the fact that they want to completely eliminate Lebanese, because just the way they have neutralized Hamas to quite an extent. But then the point here is that this is not just a group of people. Vinny, that is what Israel has to understand. This is an ideology, and ideologies do not die in wars like this. So if they are thinking that they will completely eliminate Hezbollah the way they are thinking, that is completely, I would say, a very far-fetched side of the Israeli side. Yes, they would definitely hamper them a lot. They will reduce their technologies. They will the time that the Hezbollah and the Lebanese would need to recover out of all of this is going to be high. That goes without saying. But then, as you rightly put it, at what cost? The cost is being borne by the entire countries of South Asia, which are oil importing countries, including India. So all these friends of Israel also are suffering. More so, I mean, we are just the oil importing countries. Talk about the Middle East. The Middle East has been laid vulnerable like it was never before. So we were talking about nukes. Now it is rather going to start another nuke race. What is going to stop? There were also news reporting from the South Korean side. There were also from the Saudi side, from the UAE side. What is going to stop all of them to amass nuclear weapons? Because this so-called American umbrella, the shield that the mighty American was, that myth has been broken. It was like a bubble, which the Middle East lay completely exposed to. That because of the Israeli-Iran war or the American-sponsored Israeli-Iran war, it was the Middle East that paid the highest cost. In fact, that too UAE paid the highest cost. So all these so-called friends also of Israel are at the same time reeling under this entire pressure, where the supply and the demand side both are getting impacted because of the rise in crude oil prices. The moment this blockade, the moment you see the oil market is so vulnerable, it crosses $100 barrel per mark immediately. Within seconds, the response is there. So it hovers between 95 to $100 is what it has been since the beginning of the war. It crossed to 112 also per barrel, but once the ceasefire was in place, it has slowly come down. But again, this kind of a thing happens between Israel and Lebanon. Immediately the prices shoot up again. So this entire thing is also about what the Israeli side is going to do. What I feel is that they are not going to contain themselves. Since the beginning of inception of Israel as a state, there have been on and offs, plus the Israeli election also coming up in the month of October. All of this is also there because if they declare the ceasefire effective, the cases that were pending against Netanyahu, they start getting their proceedings also start in the court again, which Netanyahu definitely cannot afford. So all this is a complex structure with the Israeli side, but here we are stuck up right now with the nuclear deal and the Strait of Hormuz. I still, I mean, maybe I'm being optimistic about it. Hormuz, I still see opening with both of them claiming a part of their toll, both America and Iran saying that okay fine, we will be claiming tolls. Now that will have cascading effect of its own kind. Strait of Malacca and other such states which were part of the UNCLOS as free trade zones, I mean free passage zones, they will also have a problem. That's a different story. But then this nuclear enrichment, that the uranium enriched that they're talking about, that is going to be a real bottleneck where the two countries get stuck up, and how they're going to come out of it is going to be the real picture.
All right, fair enough. More breaking news coming in. In a renewed push to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the United States Navy said it is clearing Iranian mines from the Strait of Hormuz. The Associated Press has reported this. However, experts say that sweeping for underwater explosives could take months, and any future claims that the US has cleared the waterway might fail to convince commercial freighters and their insurers. Also, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian on Saturday has urged citizens of the country to reduce electricity and energy consumption. And according to the semi-official Mehr news agency, this is also confirmed. Also coming in, Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has hailed the meeting with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi as the most warm, cordial exchange of views on current regional situation. He said on X, we also discussed matters of mutual interest, including the further strengthening of Pakistan-Iran bilateral relations. All right, General Katoch, the mines that have been put in the Strait of Hormuz would take months to be cleared. Even if there is a breakthrough in these talks, how are we in fact going to navigate through the strait, without being, guaranteed that there is not going to be any explosion from the bottom of the sea?
No, very frankly, once if there is a agreement reached on the Strait of Hormuz, mines is the least of the problem. We can negotiate those mines. The problem is if one side is putting the mines and the other side has to take them out, that is where the problem lies. But if both the sides have agreed that okay, we'll open it and anybody can go, then the mines won't be the problems. The mines is becoming a problem now because the Americans want to take it out and the Iranians don't. That is why it is a problem. And even if it takes a few months for the Americans to achieve this feat, which I think they won't be able to do, because you take out a set of mines and the Iranians put in some more. But what happens? What happens if Iran, they've got a very large shoreline and the narrowest point is just 21 kilometers where ships have to pass. Now you hit any ship at random, and that is the problem, because out of fear the rest won't move. So the treaty has to be for both parties. You see that, and both parties have to agree. Okay, we let them go. The Americans are not going to stop their blockade unless they're absolutely certain that the Iranians won't interfere it again. For the Americans, even if they do stop the blockade, their ships are still going to remain there, because otherwise, what is the deterrent? So I don't see any very easy solution to the Strait of Hormuz as of now. At the best case, we can have ships passing through slowly and steadily, but with the concurrence of both parties. But beyond that, I see nothing. On the Lebanon side, I've got a take that it is not the Lebanese government really which is too much concerned. They are not fighting the Israelis. It is the Hezbollah, and the Lebanon government has also got a problem with the Hezbollah. I think in my view, the Lebanese will be very happy if the Hezbollah gets out, but they've got no means of throwing them out. I mean, that is the whole point. So that war is going to go on, but every day the Hezbollah is getting weakened because Iran is not in a position to help them the way they were helping them earlier. Earlier it was a free flow. Now that free flow is not there, and Iran itself is battered. So I think their capability and capacity to help them is reducing, which is why Israel is on the offensive there. They know that they've got the upper hand as of now. Things may change a month or two down the line, I don't know, but I don't see that war ending. And very frankly, that is extraneous. That is not going to impact the criticality. The criticality is only one point, that is the Strait of Hormuz. The criticality for Iran is the nuclear deal, and for all the Asian countries who are the oil importers, it is the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans, their criticality.
All right, fair enough, sir. We've lost your connection, but nevertheless appreciate you being here. Professor Deepti Taneja, thank you so much for your time as well. We take a short break now. We'll be back.